There is another question. The shape, the outlook of the airship, will it be standard? Well, similar to standard, let's put it that way. We plan to make an apparatus close to, well, according to the standards, to the norms I was talking about, this apparatus should be close to static equilibrium. The apparatus will always be overweight. That's important for such a small apparatus and an unmanned version. Otherwise, we just might not be able to land it. It will take people to do it. So it should be overweighted always, during the entire flight phase, during landing as well. And the look, well, let's call it cigar-shaped classic look. The tail may be slightly tricky. Well, that is what we envisage. Well, another question, will any new technologies be introduced, or will the first device be, let's say, as classical as possible, nothing super experimental will be there, or will there? Yes, you talk a lot about that. Well, I talked about it. New technologies. Well, will it be a saucer? It won't. Will it be a non-classical shape? No. It doesn't make sense to do all of that on a small apparatus. A rigid body won't be there either, because it won't take off then. Everything is defined by the small size. Well, we wanted not just to work out some technology, we wanted to be a potentially commercially successful project. And if it is designed to lift only 50 kilograms, a skinny pilot, and that's it, you know, it's kind of pointless. It's not interesting. There was another question about the materials of the shell. Is it known now what materials will it be made of in our company? Right now we are in the process of looking into who can develop it for us. We understand approximately that it will be a fabric film material. As for the composition, we are now looking at it. Most likely it will be polyurethane films. The base is, well, in simple terms, it is either Capron or Lapsa. This is the power part. And the films on both sides. At least two sides. There may be more films. It's probably polyurethane. They allow for high-frequency currents. HF welding. But we are looking at other possible options right now as well. And if they will suit us in terms of performance, because there are materials that are only glued, but in my opinion, well, I would not use them, because it is last century. It's hard to ensure, well, you can, but it's hard to ensure the quality of the glue joint. Well, you can, of course. The first machines were glue. But you know, it is manual work. You want to get away from manual work. You know, smearing glue. I did it myself in the 90s. It's not the most pleasant thing to do. It's not even that it's unpleasant. We should strive for automated production. So you need to use modern methods of joining materials. So it's welding, either thermal or ultrasonic, but most likely it is high-frequency currents. So far we're in the process of searching. Another question from VK. Could the Nova 2 be a prototype for a yacht with a 2-ton payload? No, it can't. What do you mean a prototype? As a first step, I guess. In order to create a 2-ton yacht, you have to first make, well, it can't just be 2 tons. It can be 10 or 20 tons. We're talking about the following. Well, Nova 2 specifically, it can lift what it can lift. It is 2,000 cubic meters. Well, it is that gas of 1 cubic meter lifts 1 kilogram approximately. So all in all, it is about 2 tons, including the construction. Fuel is not included because we take fuel out. We are planning it overweight. That is ballast as well, because according to the norms, if we talk about a manned vehicle, we have to carry ballast. Well, here is what we plan. We take off with fuel, overweighted by the mass of fuel that is planned to be produced, plus a little bit more. So we fly, we generate fuel. The apparatus gets lighter, lighter, lighter. At some point we decide to land. Well, for example, all the fuel is exhausted except for the remaining reserve, 7 or 10%. There should be a navigation reserve. And we land. And at that moment of landing, we should have 20 to 30 kilo overweight, so that it could land on the ground, not to catch it. As with old airships, they had a point of transition through neutral buoyancy during the flight, and the device could land overweighted. That is, it continued to produce fuel. It is profitable. You can take more fuel and fly further. But then it landed. It made a maneuver, as if due to centrifugal force, it pressed against the ground, and at that moment it had to be caught by people. If they didn't catch it, then it just went upwards. If someone caught it and didn't throw it, and the others didn't, then it flies away and it falls and it crashes. There were such cases in the 30th. Well, it can make a second landing. It lands dynamically like that, but we don't want to repeat that. Such landing options are not interesting anymore. Therefore, it turns out that it will land overweight, but at the same time, during the flight, the norms require that at any moment, if the engines fail, if the propulsion system has failed, it must equilibrate and go into aerostatic flight. So just flying and letting off the gas and slowly landing wherever the pilot chooses, like a balloon flying, a free balloon. And for this, you have to have a reserve of ballast. Because if there is an overweight of fuel, for example, 100 kilograms of overweight, they have to be dropped somehow. There are two options. Dump the fuel, which is not always good, when you do it on people's heads. But actually it's acceptable in an emergency situation. Or at least part of the fuel is dumped. And part of it, well, at least concerning the part which is overweighted, 20 or 30 kilos, as I said, that part should have some ballast. It's very interesting, by the way. In the wind, it could be the so-called water alcoholic liquid. What do you call it? A mixture. Water alcoholic liquid of 40% degree. I mean, we used to put vodka in the AU-30 airship. That's convenient.